Okay, we are live. So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. And then I would like to start with the election of the chair and the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for chair?
Can I ask first, Ron, who all's here?
Yes. So in attendance, we have Rusty Williamson, Douglas Truslow, David Nelson, and Julie Spell. So we do have a quorum.
Or is Ray Burns with us?
Ray Burns is not with us currently.
Okay. Is Malcolm with us?
That being said, Malcolm is not with us either. So that being said, do we have any nominations for chair?
I'll nominate Rusty Williamson.
All right. So nominations do not need a second, but Rusty, you do have to accept the nomination.
I'll accept.
Deny it. You can deny it if you'd like.
I'll accept.
Okay. Nicole, would you like to do a roll call vote?
I would like to nominate Ray Burns. He's indicated to me previously he would consider this. I think we could do this non pro tunc, but that would be my nomination.
Here's Mr. Burns is trying to connect in. Why don't we wait, see what he says?
Okay.
Yeah, let's let him do it.
So I'm not sure exactly on the procedure for this, but Rusty, would you like to abdicate your nomination?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Ray, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
you have just been.
I had some trouble with the computer, but I think I got it fixed now.
Totally understandable. We are live on YouTube. You have just been nominated to be the chair of the ATAX committee. Would you like to accept the nomination? You will have to accept it before we have a vote.
Can we tell Ray what the background was that he was having some trouble connecting? You opened the floor for nominations. Mr. Nelson nominated Mr. Williamson. Then I had indicated that Mr. Burns was I thought he was going to be here, and that I was going to nominate him. Mr. Williamson indicated, if I understood, that he was going to agree for Mr. Burns to be nominated. So that would be my nomination for Mr. Burns. I don't think there are any other nominations, but we'll see.
Okay. That being said, do we have any other nominations? All right, Nicole?
Mr. Truslow?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Williamson?
Aye.
Mrs. Spell? You're on mute. I can see you say aye, but you're on mute.
Aye.
And Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Burns is now the chair.
All right, Mr. Burns, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to you. We still need to elect a vice chair.
May I state first why some of the reasons I nominated Mr. Burns? I've gotten to know him through this process, found him to be very, very, very reasonable. I'm aware of his background as a CEO or a manager of a large plastics company. He understands finance very, very well. And when he first called me, when we were selected for this committee, he was very insightful, asking all the right questions. And I found him to be, I was very impressed. And that's no reflection on anybody else. My reason for nominating him is because I thought that would be very good for the Isle of Palms and for this committee.
Are people waiting for me to make a comment, or is
Well, at the very least, you just need to go ahead and make a open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Okay,
Correct.
I would like to open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Let's nominate Doug.
I'm sorry.
Let's nominate Doug Trudeau.
Okay.
I second.
We don't need a second, but we do need Mr. Truslow to at least accept the nomination.
I'll accept it. Thank you.
Ready for a vote? Okay. Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Mr. Williamson,
Aye.
Mr. Truslow,
Aye.
Ms. Spell,
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
all in favor? Mr. Truslow, you're now the vice chair of the ATAX committee.
All right.
Mr. Burns, the next thing we're gonna do is the minutes.
Okay, I would like a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of June 15th, 2020.
Second.
Can I note a minor adjustment that I think may be, there were a few typos, but that's really insignificant. But I noticed as a technical matter, when under item number 2, when there had been a previous nomination, Mr. Williamson, of course, acted in complete good faith. But when as Mr. Hannah indicated, under Robert's Rules of Order, there wouldn't be a requirement for a second. There was no second. That was correct, but that wasn't the reason the motion failed. It was a technical compliance with Robert's Rules of Order. I'm just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. I don't think it makes a difference at the end of the day.
I don't think we need to, we can do it. Would you like me to call a vote for minutes?
Yes.
No,
We're
I think, I was going to suggest we could just make that that adjustment.
Okay.
And there was one other, I had one other question that I noticed wasn't here under item number 5, relative to a budget. I had inquired whether it was necessary for ATAX to vote on an ATAX budget since we weren't involved in the process. We could certainly accept it for information, but voting on a budget for millions of dollars when we weren't involved in the process was something I questioned. I think I questioned.
Mr. Truslow, are you talking about the meeting for February or the meeting for June?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the meeting from February.
Okay, we're talking about the minutes for the meeting from June currently.
All right, thank you.
All right, so now we're voting on the minutes for the meeting for June. Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Mr. Williamson,
Aye.
Mr. Truslow,
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't there. I'm
Ms.
sure.
Spell,
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
I also abstained since I wasn't present at the meeting.
that's 3 in favor, 2 abstentions. The motion passes. We move to the minutes for February 11th. And I can note that I'll make a note of what Mr. Truslow said with regards to those minutes here. Does anyone want to make a motion to pass the motion to approve the minutes of February 11th?
Motion to approve.
I would second that as amended, or was I with the matters I noted.
All right. Anybody else have any other statements for February 11th minutes? All right, we'll vote on February 11th. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Ms. Spell,
Aye.
Mr. Williamson,
Aye.
Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Mr. Truslow,
Aye.
all in favor?
Mr. Burns, the next item up is going to be the financial statements. Debbie, are you prepared to share this?
Yes, are you going to put it up or I can?
I've got it. If you would just like to go ahead and discuss it.
Sure. So this is the February 28th balance sheet for the State Accommodations Tax Fund. A little over $2 million in cash, most of which is at the South Carolina Local Government Investment Pool. Some accounts payable, some due to the general fund. That amount due to other funds, $15,000, represents payroll associated with the attendant at the Front Beach restrooms. Year to date, there's excess revenues over expenditures to the tune of $212,000. So we'll dig into revenues on the next page. We haven't received any additional payments from the state since we met in February. But a little bit more interest. Total revenues is $1,180,000. On the expenditure side, again, we haven't had a whole lot of activity since we met last month. You can see the spending on the public restrooms. We've had, utility bills, toilet paper bills, payroll, cleaning, that's all there. The next item is the contract the city has for beach front trash pickup as well as business district trash pickup. Costs associated with the maintenance of the website. Next page. There you can see the payments to the Charleston Convention and Visitors Bureau. That's the tourism promotion piece of the revenues. Next page. So here's an item to talk about. The Music in the Park event at the top of the page. Last year's Music in the Park event got canceled due to COVID. And when we were budgeting, somehow we took that provision out of the FY21 budget as well. But that event is going to happen. So you can see there that we have the $1,300, which basically amounts to the deposits put down for these two bands. And it's showing as unbudgeted. I have a couple of proposals and the committee can just give me some direction. We can, the committee can continue to fund this event as a, either, we don't have an application, but the committee can choose to fund the event as an over budget expenditure. Or you can see the Easter egg hunt is coming in significantly under budget. We can offset the expenses there, or I can reclass these expenses out and pay for them with other city funds, which is certainly easy to do. I just didn't want to make that call for the committee in case the committee wants to fund this particular event. It is certainly something that the committee has been supportive of in the past. So I guess I'm going to need y'all to kind of just give me some direction as to how you want to treat this event. I think the budget would have been $3,000. So that kind of gives you a feel for what we're talking about.
I'd like to make a motion that we fund it as we have in the past.
Yeah, we've got no issue with that.
Is that an official second, Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Doug Truslow. I'm new on the committee, so please forgive me, but I'm still trying to understand the process where we're called upon to approve the expenditures when we're not involved. I would think, since we're an advisory committee, we would defer to council, and we wouldn't have to vote on something that we weren't involved in or had little knowledge of. I respect it. We've funded it in the past. But my experience has been with government. There's no reflection on anybody at all, but that continuing to do things, when we ask why things are done, they say, well, it's always been done that way in the past, is just something I don't understand. And again, I'm new, so I'm trying to get my mind around the process.
I would like to point out, as a point of order, the approval of the music in the park was not included as an agenda item. And so I don't think it would be appropriate for us to vote on it here. We could either just defer to council and have council add it to the budget and have it approved that way, or we could go back and have a separate meeting at a later date with an application from council to have this funded. Up to you guys as to however we want to handle that, but those are our two options for moving forward there.
Or if I can speak in,
Please.
or we can, I can reclass this expense out of this fund, and then it takes the question off of the committee.
So the motion on the floor is to approve the expense to fund the event as in the past. Does anybody want to change that? Or we want to leave it as is?
Just personally, I would feel more comfortable from a FOIA standpoint if we could rescind that motion, since it wasn't on the agenda as a voting item.
Mr. Nelson, are you okay with
Sure,
rescinding?
that's fine.
All
That's
right,
fine.
Mr.
I
Williams.
just know it's a popular event, and I think it's a good use of these funds.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion's been removed from the floor.
My inclination would be to defer to council. And if council wants to have them go through the application process, then that's fine as well, but
Okay. Just moving on. The Easter egg hunt, you can see some expenses associated there. Again, that event will likely be of a smaller scope than normal, but it is going to happen. I don't think there's anything new on this page. You can see we have had some expenses associated with the purchases of body armor for the police department. Okay, here we see expenses associated with the repair of the public safety building and the refurbishment of the city's 95-foot ladder truck. The fire department piece of the public safety building repair. And that's it for expenses so far in FY21. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to point out to the committee that under the unexpended projects miscellaneous number, the last item on the last sheet, the first item, budget provision for expenditures recommended by ATAX committee, that's $25,000. I just think that everybody on the committee should just have that in the back of their mind, that budget is what we are trying to manage through the individual applications for grants and funding. That's the number that basically this committee is working with on these applications. Is that fair to say, Debbie?
That is the budget provision for FY21. I will say that normally that number is $50,000. And that's just a placeholder that's included in the budget to cover applications that might come up before the committee throughout the year. The reason it's $25,000 in FY21 is because this time last year, when we were preparing the FY21 budget, COVID was happening, or it was, and there was this effort to pare down the expenditure budgets of the city wherever we could in order to make sure we weren't overshooting what could have been significantly reduced at, we thought at the time, COVID revenue. I mean, revenues related to COVID problems. What we have found, especially in the accommodations area, is that we have not seen a significant decline in FY21 over pre-COVID levels. So that those concerns, at least with respect to accommodations, have not come to fruition. That being said, next year I would expect to budget $50,000 again in that spot. But that does not mean the committee cannot approve applications in excess of $50,000. That's really just a placeholder so that the budget reflects some level of committee approvals, because we know that y'all get requests. So certainly if y'all want that number to be bigger and for FY22, we can do that.
Okay, well, thanks for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Is there a vote necessary on this budget?
No, sir.
Okay.
And the next item would be old business, of which there is none.
Right.
And then after that, we have the new business item 6A and then 6B.
Are we ready for the presentation from Charleston Visitors Bureau?
Yes,
Mr. Lawson, you're giving that?
yes, I am.
Thank you.
All right, let me see if I can share my screen. That will be the big test. Let's see. Okay, are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
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 Right, all right. Well, hopefully that's the hardest thing I have to do. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Again, my name is Perrin Lawson. I'm the Deputy Director at the Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, DBA Explore Charleston. We are the designated marketing agency for the Charleston region, promoting it for overnight visitation. That is our primary purpose, is to bring people from somewhere else who will spend the night and spend money in our community. We are, the good thing is we're not the people who bring day trippers. We have nothing to do with day trippers. And so our concentration is on people who will actually spend a lot of money to support the businesses on the Isle of Palms and certainly to support your tax revenues. So I'll go ahead and get started. First thing I want to look at before we can get into 21 is 2020 and kind of where we ended up. I think Debbie already alluded to the fact that, we all had a lot of concern and worry over where things were going to be last year. In fact, I remember exchanging a lot of emails with Debbie about this time last year, wondering kind of what was going to happen. Would we see visitation come back or not? Obviously, when the beaches were closed, visitation was minimal. But if you look at this slide right here, you can see that actually things bounced back pretty well. In fact, at the end of the year, the average daily rate being paid was actually higher than it was in 2019. We ended up with about the same number of paid occupancy rate because things really accelerated once the beaches reopened. I won't dwell too much on that, but I think we've got a really good story to tell for this coming year. And quite frankly, the beaches, and particularly the Isle of Palms, really weathered this so much better than a lot of other places. What I like to refer to what I call sidewalk syndrome, which is what people were typically trying to avoid during the height of the pandemic, which is being on sidewalks, bumping into people, being in hotel lobbies, or having the too much of an opportunity to run into other people. When you could be at the beach, if you're renting a house, you can isolate to the extent you'd like. When you're out on the beach, the breeze is blowing, you can stay away from people, you can cook your own meals. And that really panned out very well for our beach communities, and particularly for the Isle of Palms. So moving into what we're doing for this year, this is for our current fiscal year, which began July 1 and will run through June 30. Print advertising is a big chunk of what we do because it's worked well and it continues to work, but it sort of operates on three different tiers. You've got the publications that will generate a lot of inquiries that turn into leads, that turn into actual visitors. You've got other publications that are really more for positioning and branding to really elevate the reputation of the community. And then you've got some of these others that have led to many of the awards that this region has won, that have been very tangible in us acquiring a lot of other things, like higher end visitors with higher spend, the airline recruitment that we've done, which I'm going to touch on also, and a number of other areas we're moving into, such as with what are now known as travel advisors, formerly travel agents. One of the publications you see up here is Virtuoso Life. That's specifically for high-end travel advisors. And the demise of travel agents was predicted about 5 to 10 years ago, and a lot of them are no longer around, but the ones who are doing better than ever. And amazingly, many people are using travel agents or travel advisors now who weren't a few years ago. So it's something that really has had a resurgence. Real quickly, I wanted to run into some of the print advertising we do. And the idea is to sell the totality of the destination, because the reality is a lot of people don't know where our beaches are in relation to anything else. And a lot of people don't know where historic Charleston is in relation to anything else. And what we end up having, by the nature of the proximity of the beaches with historic Charleston, is pretty much a unique destination that can't be duplicated. And that's what really helps us sell. People that want a historic Charleston vacation also want to be able to visit the beach, but people who visit the beach also want to be able to visit historic Charleston. So we've really got something that is, quite frankly, an advantage over the vast majority of our competition. And our competition essentially is anything really on the East Coast. So, we're not so much in, Isle of Palms is not so much in competition at the end of the day with Kiawah Island. It's in competition with everything else up and down the East Coast. Another one of our beautiful ads, again, featuring the beaches juxtaposed to downtown. Another similar, adding in golf, outdoor adventures. Certainly with the pandemic, people want to spend more time outside. And that's a great thing that you've got going on at Isle of Palms. You've got golf, you've got tennis, you've got eco tours, you've got all this outdoor stuff people want to do. Yeah, the beach is kind of a focal point, but it's not the only thing. And we know from all the research that we've gotten our hands on that the more you can offer people, the more appealing you become. And that's really what we're trying to do in the context of these ads, and certainly pointing out some of the awards we've won. Again, another one showing, the totality of the destination here, really letting the imagery sell. rather than, keeping the copy to a minimum. And another, this is actually an example of a spread where we've actually called out specific places to stay. Obviously, Wild Dunes Resort at the Isle of Palms. And another one, obviously, you've got the people fishing, the guys going surfing, again, juxtaposed against downtown. And one more. So again, I won't go into all the details of all these, but we have figured out what works over the years, and these continue to work extremely well. Hand in hand with that is a lot of social media. We actually plan our social media calendar out 6 months in advance. And if anyone's interested, I actually have about 10 or 12 pages worth of social media that specifically either mentioned the Isle of Palms or was focused on the Isle of Palms, in addition to different media outlets we worked with and provided assistance to. And for example, I found a couple recently. This was really wild. Just shows you how really responsive you need to be. This was at the end of January. We got a call from a television station in Cincinnati. And of course, we have direct air service to Cincinnati. And these people were running a promotion about the Charleston area. And they were interviewing local people. And one of their news anchors said her favorite place to go if she had a chance for a long weekend getaway was the Isle of Palms. So they contacted us for B-roll and still photography to use in this promo. They did. And there was an opportunity for people to actually win a trip from the Cincinnati station to the Isle of Palms. So that was a really, what I thought was a really neat thing and something for us to, again, we didn't go out and get that, but that came looking for us. But in the grand scheme of things, we're out pitching to a lot of different people at a lot of different times and rolling the Isle of Palms in there, sometimes as the focal point, just like we did when we had Top Chef out there a few years ago. And sometimes it's part of the greater destination sell. But what you've got on your screen is a really good example. This actually appeared on January 31st. And you can see the type of response it got on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But again, this wasn't something we just put up with 2 days notice. This was planned out months in advance. And again, part of our whole strategy to try to get people to visit the Isle of Palms in the off season, to discover that it's a great place to be, any time of the year, not just, Memorial Day to Labor Day. So here are a few of the things on the bigger scope of things that are happening in 21. We relaunched our primary website, explorecharleston.com, to update the aesthetic and the color palette, and also really make it a little bit more easy to use. The numbers are really looking good. Again, we've always gotten hundreds of thousands of site visits every month. It certainly dropped down during the pandemic, but it has rebounded extremely well. We got a partnership with Smithsonian Magazine now, a great unduplicated audience we don't have in any of other media outlets, of people who are very primed to visit our area. And knowing how important social business is, weddings were one of the few things that didn't fall off the cliff last year. People still found a way to get married. They may have downsized it, they may have used a different venue, but they came. And this is going to be hugely important for us again going forward. And with the facilities you've got at Isle of Palms, in particular with the new Sweetgrass Inn, those of you who have not been up to the top floor of that are in for a treat when you do. I think they're probably going to be booked every single weekend with wedding receptions. And so it's an extremely important piece of business and something that's going to be extremely beneficial for the Isle of Palms. There's an example of the redesign on the Explore Charleston website, showing you how you call out lodging. There's Wild Dunes Resort, showing packages that they're offering, a way to get rates and connect to them directly, which is our goal, is to get you excited and then send you off where you can actually book your reservation and spend money. So some more things happening in 21. One thing I'm really excited about is the Beaches TV campaign that we've got running right now in our North Carolina, South Carolina drive markets and a few other key markets as well. We also are following that up with a campaign on the Tennis Channel. As you know, the Volvo Car Open is not going to have any spectators this year. But the good thing is it's the only thing tennis-wise going on that week. So it means anybody who's a tennis fan, and there are a lot of them, are going to be watching the Tennis Channel to watch that entire tournament. And they're going to see our commercials. They're going to see our B-roll. All of that promoting the Charleston area is a great place to visit. And certainly the beaches are going to play a huge part in that. We also got some other good news that another tournament that they've now renamed the Charleston 250 was going to be played somewhere else. I can't remember where, but it's canceled wherever it was, apparently due to a COVID outbreak, and they're moving it to the tennis center here on Daniel Island. So the week after that, we have another tournament here, and we're going to be able to advertise in that as well. And we have another 5-week TV campaign coming up in May. I hope many of you are aware of the JetBlue flight to Los Angeles that launched back in December. For those of you who don't know, we've played sort of the lead role in air service recruitment for this area, starting with Southwest when we began flying here in March of 2011, and it's led to more and more good things. Of course, during the pandemic, we lost all but about 40% of our service. The good news now is that we're back up to, as of April, we'll have 80% of our pre-COVID seat capacity regained. By May, it is extremely possible we'll be at 90%. And the airlines are looking very favorably upon Charleston right now because we are a market that has always performed well for them, and they think it will continue to do so. Why this is so critically important, particularly for Wild Dunes, with the new facilities that are going to appeal not just to social, but the corporate and association meetings, this is going to be able to bring more people from more places. And the beauty of this is these people are going to come without a car. They're going to get to the airport. They're going to take a shuttle out to the Isle of Palms, and they're going to stay there spending lots and lots of money. And that, quite frankly, is the Isle of Palms' real opportunity going forward. You're pretty much built out at this stage of the game. So Wild Dunes, with all the meetings business they can bring in that is not so weather dependent, is where you're really going to up the sales, and that's going to translate into tax revenues for Isle of Palms. I can tell you right now from people I know in Chicago, if they could be down here like first week in April as opposed to being in Chicago, they'd be down here in a skinny minute, the weather alone. And then when they get down here and find out everything they can do, it makes it that much more enticing. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, travel advisors are huge, particularly as they book the high end. As I stated, we're about bringing in overnight visitors, but it's not necessarily more people, it's people who spend more. And that has always been our goal, is to bring in an educated, increasingly affluent visitor who will be less of a strain on our infrastructure and contribute more economically to help support not just jobs and employment, but the tax revenues that our communities need to operate. So website analytics. We also have our specific Charleston area beaches site, which connects obviously off the Explore Charleston site. And the great news there is Isle of Palms is #1 in traffic on this site by a big margin. And the site traffic here, when you compare it, and again, this is comparing it to 2019, so we're doing a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison. Your traffic is way up, about 32.5%, and that's just January 1st through March 14th. As continuing numbers of people get vaccinated, as more and more people feel comfortable traveling, you're going to see more and more people booking. And I don't think I'll live to regret this, but I honestly think this is going to be the best year you've ever had. And I feel pretty confident about that. So finally, where does the rubber really meet the road? Well, here's some great new statistics we've got from a company called Key Data. As some of you may know, we used to use a company called Intopia Destametrics to measure how property management companies, what their success levels were, what the performance metrics were for renting beach properties. The problem with that was it relied on companies to submit their data each month. And that's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they wouldn't. And the sample set we had to draw from was not as large as it needed to be. Fortunately, we came across Key Data, and I know that they had talked to the city of Isle of Palms at one point about possibly working with y'all. but they have an add-on to the property management systems of the company. So basically, nobody has to do anything. The data is being fed into a database and aggregated so that we can see what's going on. And I can pull these reports pretty much as will, and they're updated about every day or so. But the beauty here is if you look at the paid and owner occupancy, the dark blue bar being this year, light blue being last year, you'll see that March through August, we're well ahead of last year. In fact, at 48% versus a little under 41% last year. And again, if you look at the bottom right corner, that's dated March the 10th. So the likelihood is that it's improved since then. I think people are understanding they need to go ahead and book early if they want something, which is good. We want as much booked in advance as possible. And next, if you see this, Isle of Palms open nights, again, dark blue, and this time the shorter bar is a good thing. That means there are actually fewer room nights available to sell at the Isle of Palms, again, as of March 10th. Last year, that time, you had 31,755 available room nights. This year, it's only 24,744. So this is an extremely good performance, knowing you've got that much business on the books and a lot less left to sell through the summer. And then finally, the thing that really I love more than anything is looking at the revenue. And this is, dismiss that word nightly because it's just talking about lodging. It's not talking about incremental revenues. And again, the dark blue being this year, you can see where, now obviously you would expect the numbers to be much better this spring than last spring when you were closed, but look through the summer months and it's still significantly higher. In fact, as of last year around this time, you had about $14 million in lodging revenue booked. This year, it's a little over 23 million. So that's the one slide, if there is only one I'd look at, that really gives me a lot of confidence that, you know, the community as a whole and Isle of Palms in particular is going to have a really, really good year. So that's what I had for y'all today. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. And I'm certainly happy to meet with anybody one-on-one if you've got a lot of questions or you need more detail. Happy to come to you. We can do it over the phone, whatever works best for you. But that's my presentation for today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Perrin.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions from anybody for Perrin?
I would just like to make a housekeeping point here. Perrin, could you please stop sharing your screen?
Okay, sure. If I could find out how to get back to it. Let's see. Is it still up? Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
There we
My
go.
apologies.
No, it's fine. So now we can see if anybody has any questions.
Okay.
I guess I'll ask one question. Perrin, in your annual program, is there anything that you do that's specific to the Isle of Palms in terms of trying to generate tourism traffic? Or is it really more the area that you're hoping that by bringing in the beach aspect of your advertisement that the Isle of Palms business will come along with that?
Well, the answer is sort of twofold. First, everything we do, I would say the vast majority, 80 or 90% of everything we do benefits the Isle of Palms directly. Anything else benefits you indirectly. It truly is, you know, the old rising tide floats all boats. You know, it's everything. We as a community are very integrated, and I think we're finding that out more and more the larger this community grows, and we cannot operate in a vacuum separately from each other. There really is a very synergistic relationship between what you think of as Charleston or historic Charleston and our beach communities. They complement each other very well, and that, quite frankly, is our key marketing advantage over our competition. When we're looking at Savannah, when we're looking at St. Augustine, we're looking at Asheville, Nashville, places like that, that we've got a combination of assets and attributes that other people don't have. And we're also overcoming people's, I guess I'll say geography challenges, that people don't really understand where things are. A lot of people don't understand where the Isle of Palms or Kiowa, Folly Beach, or any of these places are in relation to other things, or even in relation to Charleston. Conversely, a lot of people don't understand that Charleston has all these wonderful beach communities. And a lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll say, they'll think you got a beach or you got a harbor. They don't understand you can have both. And that is the thing that so often sets us apart. If we can get people interested in this area, then we can drill down and get them to the beach. If that's what they want, we can get them to the beach that is most appropriate for them and what they want. I can tell you that over the years, I used to be back in the hotel business, and we used to do a town and country package, and people loved it because they could get two different experiences. But even to this day, what people ask is they'll say, okay, which beach should I go to? Well, the answer is it depends on what it is you're looking for. I mean, Seabrook might be the right answer for some people, whereas Isle of Palms is the right answer for somebody else. It's a matter of getting them here, showing them what's available. But so much of this is really pushing the Isle of Palms, particularly from the media relations standpoint. And the other thing that I should have mentioned more and didn't is from the sales aspect, because what you've got that some of our other beach communities don't have is the meeting facilities out at Wild Dunes. That is going to be, and I think I did allude to that, that's going to be critical going forward to boost your revenues. In fact, we've got a whole sales department of about 10 people that, this year they couldn't do it, but they stayed in contact with the key people they needed to, because it's a relationship business. They'll be back on the road, going to trade shows, making sales calls and city blitzes. And that's something that you've got to have, that takes bodies to do, and it takes people who know what they're doing. And actually, this is a report right here that we shared with the mayor back in August. Actually, that's not it. This is it. And it shows all the meeting leads we generated for Wild Dunes over 2 years. And it was like 604 leads that would have equated over 200,000 room nights. Now, obviously, all those don't convert, but you never even have a chance to convert them if you don't generate them. And that is a hugely tangible advantage and a service that we provide for the Isle of Palms that quite frankly can't be duplicated.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got another question. In listening to your presentation, it seems like your focus is really on the hotel business when it comes to the overnight stays. Specifically on Isle of Palms, there's not a large number of hotels or hotel rooms, let's say, but there's an extraordinary number of homes that people rent through agencies like Island Realty or Beachside or exclusive properties, and as well as through VRBO and Airbnb and all these other businesses. Do you do anything in regard to that, the rental of individual homes through these other mechanisms, these other vehicles to get people to rent in accommodation?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you pointed out a great point, is that the lodging component at our beach communities primarily is individually owned homes, whether they're rented through VRBO or Airbnb or go through Island Realty or somebody else or Carroll or whatever. And that is really what we're pushing for the beaches, because that's what they sell. In fact, those graphs I showed you at the end, that is on beach rental performance. That's on houses and condos. That doesn't take into hotels. Hotels is a completely different report, and that's really more specific to places like Charleston, Mount Pleasant, and North Charleston. It has a lot less to do with the Isle of Palms. Now, that said, you do have a handful of hotels there, and they certainly are very important. But as you pointed out, the vast majority of your lodging inventory is individually owned homes, and that's and that is exactly what we're pushing. We're getting people to the website, whether it's the Explore site or the Charleston area beaches site, and then pushing them out where they go to the various realty companies or however they want to do it. But again, it goes back to the idea is to get people excited about the idea of visiting this area. And then they're going to do their research and decide, where they want to stay, what makes sense for them. And if we can make it easier for them to get here, via, better air service or whatever, then the greater opportunity we have to actually convert an inquiry or a lead into an actual visitor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do.
Well, so I'll ask another one. Doug,
you go ahead. You finish. I'll go last.
Perrin, I'm new on the committee, so I might ask a question that is maybe obvious or has already been answered over the course of the past year or so. But do you or does CVB submit a plan at the beginning of a new year, let's say your new fiscal year, for what projects or activities you're planning on doing for the next year?
We typically include that in something we call our bureau book that we publish. Of course, all of that is subject to change, and it's more of a grand outline because it's a matter of constantly reassessing what we're doing, what works, what doesn't. Do we need to scale something back? Do we need to ratchet something up? Of course, last year, everything changed. But I've also submitted something to Councilman Moy for him to look at that I think addresses exactly what you just asked.
Is that something that you ordinarily do every year, or is it just on?
No, it is not. What we typically do is put out each year our bureau book that explains how we're organized, how we're governed. It explains our finances, and it gives our program of work by department and what they do. A lot of what we do is going to be, I hate to say the same thing, but it's looking at what we're doing within these individual departments. Like when it comes to, selling meetings for the corporate or association market, a lot of that is always going to be going to trade shows. It's making those relationships with the key planners and making sure they get what they need, and then, shepherding them along the process to go ahead and have their meeting, here, say at the Isle of Palm. And same thing with marketing. It's like, how much do we do in print? What do we emphasize? What do we de-emphasize? What do we do in television, digital, which we do a ton in? It's seldom is there something, say, an earth-shattering, change in direction, because again, we're not trying to be a lot of different things. What we're trying to do is generate overnight visitation, and we know how to do that. We know how to do that really well. And we know when you need the visitation, you don't need it as much in the summer, but you're always going to have it. So our emphasis the last several years has been on promoting what we call the island lifestyle, which is less about an emphasis on the beach and more about an emphasis on everything else you can do, whether it's ride your bike, play golf, play tennis, or whatever, to boost your visitation. So there's not as much of it's not as cyclical as it has historically been. But then there are things that come along that are hugely important, such as, with the PGA Championship coming in May. That's a big deal. And that reflects well on this entire community. And it attracts people that will filter out into everywhere. In fact, the last time I was here in 2012, Isle of Palms had a really, really good August because there were so many people here. And it's one of those things that, it looks like it's Kiowa focused, but it's got a huge support from the city of Charleston, and it provides benefit for everybody. So there are a lot of big things that we're involved in. Air service probably being the biggest and most ongoing thing that truly benefits everybody by bringing more overnight visitors to the community. And again, not necessarily bigger numbers, but bringing those people who do have the disposable income A lot of these people, of course, end up, becoming property owners here. And many of them have bought property at the Isle of Palms. So it really does have, not just a trickle effect, it has a direct effect throughout the entire regional economy.
Okay, thank you. Doug, did you have a question?
I said I would defer and let anybody else ask questions, and then I would try to follow up. If so, if not, I'll ask my questions.
Why don't you go ahead then?
All right. Mr. Lawson, I'm Doug Truslow. I'm
Yes, sir.
likewise new on the ATAX committee, but I understand the general law regarding accommodations tax. First, I am going to take you up on your invitation to call. What is your best number to reach you?
805-3050.
843
Yes, sir. That's my direct line here at the office.
805-3050.
Mhm.
All right. I indicated that I was new, but I understand the general concept of or the specific statutes relating to ATAX. I'm more interested right now on two things. Number one, the first thing would be the corporate organization that we have as our DMO, designated marketing organization. Am I correct? You're set up as a 501c6?
Yes, sir.
So for the people that might be listening, or for the record, you're basically a business union or a business association, if we can. You're not a charitable organization, is that
No,
right?
we're not a nonprofit, but we are a not-for-profit.
Okay, as a 501c6 nonprofit, it's not a charitable organization, correct?
That's correct.
It doesn't have shareholders, and you're
That's
not
correct.
designed. So you have money coming in and money goes out.
That's correct.
And I'm mindful of Ronald Reagan's adage about trust but verify. So I want to ask some questions about where our money on the Isle of Palms goes. And I appreciate what you've done, and I very much, I love our neighbors, but I'm trying to focus on Isle of Palms and what's being done for the Isle of Palms, exclusive of others. I want to focus on our taxpayers, our tourists, our visitors, if you will, and what's in our best interest. For your corporation, do we know how much you spend? If you don't show a profit, you can spend money on advertising, salaries, on, and just what comes in goes out. Is that in essence what happens?
We have an annual budget, and it is divided among various departments. Marketing certainly is the lion's share of what we spend. And we provide audited financial reports to the Isle of Palms every year.
Okay, I've looked at those, and I have to tell you honestly, and that's why I'll follow up with some questions. I wasn't satisfied with what I saw regarding the budgets that were provided and the expenditures. It was more of a summary and didn't have the detail that I would like to see. For the Isle of Palms, in your 501c6, is the Isle of Palms a member?
The Isle of Palms is
bylaws.
It's a funding government.
I understand, but are we a member?
I don't know if you'd necessarily be a member, because the members are all private businesses. They purchase a membership, but you have a seat on our board.
So what you have is you've got money coming in from government entities, and you've also got money coming in from private industry.
Correct.
So what I'm trying to get to is what financial information are we entitled to? I mean, you got our tax money. Are we entitled to know how you're spending it, whether it could be for travel and entertainment, salaries, the details? Are we entitled as a funding entity to know what you're doing with our money?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not the person to ask about that, because I'm not the finance person. But I can certainly find out for you.
Okay. How long would it take?
Well, give me a week.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I don't want to push you on that. I'm just trying to make sure that we've got the Isle of Palms pays your DMO
Right.
about 600, rounded up to
Right.
about $600,000 a year. And I need to make sure for our taxpayers and our people that provide lodging, that it's a wise expenditure for the Isle of Palms. And that's why I'm asking. From what I've seen, the
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the data I've seen doesn't give me any assurance that the money is well spent or not well spent. I'm not saying it's not. I don't know what I don't know. So that's why I want to make sure that we're entitled. If you were a public entity rather than a 501c6, we would be entitled under Freedom of Information to get all your records. If you're our corporation, but if we're a member, we would be entitled to know. We would be entitled to audited information. We could do a forensic audit if we want. Is that something that y'all would be willing to do? Let us see your financial records, or you need to ask somebody?
I guess I'm not really sure what you're trying to get to. And I think what we need to do is look at it more in context. You really have to understand the concept of destination marketing. Again, it's not, if we have, 8 or 9 governments all trying to market and do their own little thing, it's not going to achieve what you want to achieve. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is the results, and the results kind of speak for themselves. What you're basically getting for your $650,000 is the benefits of a $20 million organization. And you cannot replicate that on your own with the money you have. And that's just, it takes resources, and it takes people, and it takes a skill set and a knowledge of how to get this done. And that's what's happened at the Isle of Palms. And, again, all I can say is ask the people in the industry, ask the folks at Wild Dunes if they think what we do is important for their success. And I think you'll hear that they think it is.
That really wasn't my question. I'm not questioning your integrity or some results that you've gotten. I'm trying to determine whether, first of all, are we entitled to know specifically where our money goes? We've had, not your organization, but we read in the newspaper about organizations, taking flights to Europe, spending hundreds, if not more, on wine and lavish trips. And I'm not saying it's yours, but again, I'm mindful of what Ronald Reagan said about trust but verify. So I do want to follow up with you and see if our money is where our money is going. And I'm not, frankly, I like to be straight up with you. It doesn't give me any comfort when you can't tell me whether we would be entitled to know where our money goes. For example, we have a you know what Vanguard is, a mutual fund, or any mutual fund, or my bank. If I go to my bank and I said, hey, I want to know where my money is, or I want to say to Vanguard, where's my money going and what my expenses are, they're going to give it to me in a matter. There's no question. So that causes me some concern, but we can follow up in a week or so, and I promise I'll call you.
Okay.
The second thing was you mentioned the rising tide lifts all boats, and that resonated with me, and I appreciate it. One of my concerns is whether the tide's coming up. We know the tide's coming up. There's not going to be any more beach property. There's a great demand. We have 2.5 million more people in the Isle of Palms. Now, when I got married, there were 6,100 people in Mount Pleasant. And now, we're running up against 100,000. So we've got supply and demand. Would we be better off? One of my questions is going to be, candidly, would we be better off given that the tide's going to rise, would we be better off having our own boat? Should we be anchored to you and to other communities? And I'd like for you to, I think you've already addressed that, but let me ask it a different way. How much do you get from all the beach communities I've seen on your site get some advertising, and it looks more like more or less like it's equal. How much do you get from Sullivan's Island, for example? So I can compare apples to apples. How much do you get from them?
Well, with
How much
Sullivan's
do you
Island,
get
it's Sullivan's Island is a minimal amount of money, primarily because they have minimal accommodations for rent.
I understand. How much do you get from them?
It's probably in the neighborhood of $25,000.
How much do you get from Folly?
It's in the neighborhood of $20,000.
Okay. Does Folly Beach do they come exclusively through you, or have they?
No, they don't. They
Okay.
have something they set up a number of years ago that is separate from us.
So when we were talking about rising tide lifts all boats, they've gotten their own boat. Was that from designated marketing?
If that's the analogy you'd like to use, yeah.
How do you know whether that's working out well for them, or is it a bad model?
I will say that the Isle of Palms is doing better than they are.
I can understand completely why Sullivan's Island might want to go with you because they just don't have enough money coming in from ATAX to justify having their own DMO. Isle of Palms, on the other hand, has $600,000 more or less that we're required to funnel to a DMO, whether it's you or somebody else. Is that the way? Am I reading that right, or am I?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes, and it has to be an organization that is set up as a not-for-profit and has its primary function being tourism marketing, and it needs to be an existing organization.
I would look at it like a lawyer and say that it would take about 4 hours to set up a 501c6. And then you'd have to have your DMO with a board of directors. Is that the way I understand it? Doesn't look like it's real hard to set up.
My understanding is you certainly could, but that you wouldn't be immediately eligible to receive the funding. That is the explanation that I've heard over the years.
Correct. I see it the same way. And plus we would have to get Turk to say grace over it. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I would assume so, yes.
And for the people that might be listening, Turk is the oversight committee, the tourism expenditure review committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So they would look at it, and we could go on our own the same. I'm not saying we should. I'm trying to be open-minded, but Folly Beach has been successful, and they have a lot less accommodations tax coming in, but they went on their own. And I'm saying that Folly Beach is you still provide them with some very good exposure. And I'm trying to get my mind around why we shouldn't consider our alternatives and follow Folly Beach's business model. I think Dorchester may be moving in that direction. Up and down the East Coast, people are starting, if they have enough ATAX money, are doing it themselves rather than going in another direction. Am I reading that right, or am I wrong?
I don't know. I can't speak to what other communities may or may not be doing, but I can say that you'll end up with disjointed efforts where you end up, you do two things. You end up viewing yourself as being in competition with who is not truly your competition, and you end up with a lot less resources. There are economies of scale to be realized here, and $600,000 sounds like a lot of money. And it is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money when it comes to destination marketing.
Okay. You may have heard me when we started this. I was talking about, somebody said it was insanity to do the same thing over and over and expect to get a different result. I'm just trying to figure out what our alternatives are. This is not a reflection on you. I'm trying to, because I do understand that you work very hard. I have one other question, and then I don't want to dominate this. I can call you and ask about some performance metrics and that sort of thing. But just so I'll understand, I'm one of these guys that is looking at I try to be unemotional and deal with facts and the figures and go from there. I needed to understand the process, and we'll follow up. But my last question for today, would be, well, two questions. Number one, when you get our money, our $600,000, am I correct? I hope I'm not, but am I correct that you commingle it with everybody else's money that in the Low Country?
Yes, it goes into an operating fund.
So is it commingled?
Well, if you're asking me if we have a separate pot of money that just to promote the Isle of Palms, the answer to that would be no.
Okay. And on the converse side of that, of commingling, for our expenses commingled with, for example, the city of Charleston, is our money commingled with theirs, North Charleston and say Kiowa and Seabrook?
When our expenses, when we're are incurred because we're trying to promote, again, the vast majority of everything we do is to promote everybody. And so
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, so it wouldn't be like, well, we're running this just to help North Charleston or this just to help somebody else. Now, in the grand scheme of things, will the degree of benefit be better for some community as opposed to another? That certainly is possible. But on the whole, as I mentioned it right, I think at the beginning of my presentation, the vast majority of what we do is always going to benefit you directly, and you will benefit indirectly from anything else we do.
I understand what you said, but I was really focused on our expenses are commingled with everybody else's. Is that correct?
Let me see if I can give you an example. When we buy an ad, we buy an ad. And it benefits a lot of different people. So it's not a matter of, well, here's a part that's for Isle of Palms or here's a part for somebody else. I mean, that's not, I see what you're saying, but that's not the way destination marketing works. And I understand you're trying to get to, I understand you've got some points, but promoting a region or any sort of destination, working together and having the resources, whether it's people, money, or whatever, that's the way you're successful. It's not about segregating things into tiny little areas. And we found that in everything that goes on. What happens in Mount Pleasant definitely has an impact on Isle of Palms. We've certainly seen that. The more we can work together collectively, whether it's on roads, whether it's on traffic, whether it's on, public policy, the better outcome we'll get. And destination marketing is no different.
All right. I think you misunderstood my question, but what I'm trying to find out is if there is a means so that we can trace where the Isle of Palms $600,000 is actually going. And that was my concern. I can follow up with a phone call.
Okay. Well, it goes into our operating fund, just like the funding we receive from every other government.
Okay. Along that line, you mentioned Mount Pleasant. Does Mount Pleasant do they provide y'all with all their ATAX money, or are they doing some on their own?
They provide us with all of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw from one of your submissions to Mount Pleasant that the Isle of Palms gives, I want to say, this little Isle of Palms, 4,300 people, provides you with more ATAX money than Mount Pleasant, according to one of your submissions.
That's correct.
So we're giving more money than they are. But this is what I'm trying to get my mind around. We're providing you with more money, a lot more money, 50% more than Mount Pleasant, but they're getting more bang for the buck than we are. Sullivan's Island's getting more bang for the buck. I love Folly Beach. They're getting more bang for the buck. Kiowa, Seabrook, and on and on. I'm trying to, again, not questioning your integrity and your success. I'm trying to find out in my own mind so that my duty is to my taxpayers, my friends that live on the Isle of Palms, the widow across the street, her husband had been a Methodist minister, the people that have, do you know how much we have in housing, lodging assets on the Isle of Palms? Does it sound like about $2.5 billion of outside of Wild Dunes? I need the answer to them as well. So I'm trying to figure out if we're getting no reflection on you trying to figure out if we're getting the best bang for our buck rather than a bang for our buck. That's so. If you could address, well, you've already addressed that. I'll follow up with a phone call later.
Okay. I really don't. Yeah, I really don't know how I can elaborate on that any further. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I appreciate you you spending so much time with us, and thank you.
Sure. You're welcome.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Perrin, for joining our
You're welcome.
meeting. I do appreciate your candor and all of the information you have provided.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Ron, do we want to go to the next item on the new business agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I think that from here on out, I was just going to, turn the floor over to you as the chair. But if you would like me to continue, I'll go ahead and introduce the next agenda item, which is 6B, consideration of an application for funding by the MUSC Hauling Center Cancer Center's Lovelo bike ride event in the amount of $10,000.
Can I make a comment first? Because a threshold question or concern, Mr. Chairman?
Go right ahead.
This sounds like a wonderful cause. I intend to donate to them on my own. The time of the year is excellent compared to other applicants. Quite frankly, this is one of the best I've seen. It's very detailed. There are a number of members of our community who support it, and there's been a previous grant. And council generously has already indicated, separate and apart from us, I think the proper channels were followed. Lovelo went to public safety and then to council to ask that the front beach be closed down, that parking be provided. So our council has already made some and also we would provide some first responder assistance. So council is very much behind the concept. We have a separate issue here for right now is the grant process. Unfortunately, and it's through no fault of anyone, we have a new application process that occurred in February. It hadn't been able to get made public yet on our website. So Lovelo used the old application rather than the one that's in force currently. So I would ask that that Lovelo consider holding in abeyance any decision or presentation until we can get a proper current application using the application process that's now in force. Again, that's through no fault of them. It's no fault of the city. But I would ask them if they would consider holding their presentation in abeyance until we can get that application. And I'll volunteer to help them see that it's done. We could meet within, if Mr. Chairman, whatever you say and whatever the pleasure is of the other members of our committee, meet on an expedited basis and try to help them get there. But I think we need to have the correct application before we can move forward. Then there's some threshold things that have to be dealt with. So that would be my request. If on the other hand, Lovelo wants to go ahead today, that's their call. I think they might be wise to wait, but that's their call.
Just as a point of order, if you are asking for the application to be essentially rejected in favor of having it applied again on a more recent application, that would need to be stated in a motion.
Then I would make a motion. Kind of hate to use the word reject because I think they're doing very, very good work. But if that's the word I have to use, no, I would not use that word to reject. I would say that I would vote to defer a decision and table the presentation until the up-to-date application was submitted. I don't want to use the word reject, just they could, for them to amend their application.
Doug, could you state that in the form of a motion?
I would move to defer a presentation pending an application that that uses the current application.
Do I have a second? Well, I second that motion.
Well, thank you.
Any discussion?
Well, before we get there, if Lovello simply says they agree, then it would be moot. We wouldn't even have to take a vote. What's their pleasure?
Actually, there's a vote, there's a motion on the floor. The committee does have to vote.
I'm sorry?
There's a motion.
Since there's a motion on the floor, the committee does have to take a vote.
All right.
All right, so the motion on the floor, we're voting on whether or not we are deferring this presentation upon application using the most current application. Mr. Nelson,
Nay. I think we should let them go ahead while they're here and they've waited this long to present.
okay. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Truslow,
Aye.
Mr. Williamson,
Nay.
Ms. Spell.
Nay.
Okay, the motion fails.
All right, any other motions for discussion?
So she could go ahead with her presentation, Mr. Burns?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Good
on.
morning.
There you go.
I wanted to also say that we're happy to complete the new application as well. Whatever that is, if someone is happy to email that application, we can get that completed and turned in as soon as possible. I'll go ahead and speak to what Lovello is doing. As you know, Isle of Palms did approve to have us finish our rides there this year, which we're thrilled and excited. I've been working with your fire department team for the past 2 years, and they have really taken this under their wing as one of their annual events to ride their bikes. I'm actually hoping to get those guys in their gear on the route this year. So I think that could be a lot of fun for Isle of Palms. In 2019, 21% of our riders came from out of the Tri-County region, and we did ride through Isle of Palms that year. I think we will succeed in having more than that this year. We have a lofty goal of 1,000 riders, and all of our routes will go through the Isle of Palms and finish at Isle of Palms. We have a 25, a 50, and 100-mile route. We also have added our island ride and a stationary bike ride at the finish line. So we are opening this up to more of a family audience this year in hopes to really encourage more children and families to get behind cancer research, specifically for Hollings Cancer Center in our region. As you probably know, Hollings Cancer Center is the only national designated cancer center in the state. So we do serve everyone. We are working closely with the business community there to try to get first right of refusal for any of the food items we're looking at and any other items. I will actually be taking our operations committee and along with a couple of the firefighters around to all of the local businesses to discuss how we can partner moving forward. And given that the event is on November 6th, it really is a good time to try to bring some more folks out to the island. And I'm hoping that, a good number will try to stay there since it is, for some people, 100 miles is a long way to ride and maybe don't want to drive home that night. or they don't want to get up too early and drive out to the start line. So they're going to stay the night before. So with that, our registration opens on Wednesday, the 24th, and the ride is on on November 6th. And I thank you for letting me speak. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. One more thing, 100% of those firefighters' money that they've raised has gone to cancer research. And we'll be getting more information about how that money has been spent in the past couple of years. So.
Thank you. Does anybody care to make a motion?
I have a question first.
Sure.
And this was part of my concern about maybe Lavella would want to wait and get an updated application. The law is very clear on what we can or what council. We just make an advisory recommendation, but we're supposed to be the guardian of the, or I guess in the nature of doing recon for council. They're ultimately the ones that are responsible. But the law is very clear on what we can spend money on and we can't. I'm very supportive of what Lavella is doing, and I intend to contribute. But first thing that I want to do, maybe it's just the lawyer in me want to check and make sure they were registered as a charity with Secretary of State, because we can't.
Yes.
It's ill. Did I hear you? I had checked with Secretary of State and it didn't show up on the website. So that was one of the things that we were going to need to have. We're going to have the IRS designation as a 501c3. I'm relieved to hear that.
So let me just explain how at MUSC, all of our events fall under the MUSC Foundation. And so that would be the 501c3 where all of the funds are going. And then within the foundation is our account.
So it's not Lavella as a registered 501c3.
Correct.
Which leads me to the second part of it is it's illegal for us to, according to Turk. I'm just looking at what Turk is, don't they? Okay. They tell us that on their website that we can't do a pass through. So I just want to make sure that we dotted the I's and cross the T's, and that we could demonstrate that this was going to be financially advantageous for under the statute. For example, if you have 100 people spend the night on the Isle of Palms for this event for 2 nights at $400 a night, it's all the money is going for a good cause, but is it a wise use of the taxpayers' money? I'm going to contribute, but I'm trying to see if this is going to be in compliance with the law and what the precedent would be. Again, wonderful organization. I can tell you're a very nice person, but when the Heart Association, Diabetes Association, abused children, abused women come and ask, I don't know the answer to this. What are we supposed to do then? Do we say and how do I respond to our taxpayers?
Absolutely. So Heart Association has the Heart Walk. MUSC Foundation has Lovello. So that Lovello is the name of the event. So March Dimes has the March for Babies, but it all goes, you're giving your check, you're giving the money to the organization, which would be the American Heart Association, or the March of Dimes, which are 501c3 organizations who hold events to raise money. So in our case, Lovello is just the name of the event. It's actually the MUSC Hollings Cancer Center Lovello Bike Ride. So that's the full name of it, if that helps.
It does. My concern is that right now, Isle of Palms may figuratively have a target on its back. I also understand that Turk, and I don't know how much auditing they do. Sounds to me it's kind of like an IRS audit. Chances of us getting audited aren't particularly high. But if we were, and they saw they looked and saw that we funded a Lovello event And they checked with Secretary of State and saw, they typed in Lavello and didn't see it as 501c3. We would not only have lost that money, but they would penalize us the next year and subject us to other audits. And that's why I wanted to make sure that the paperwork got right.
So the paperwork should have the MUSC Foundation tax information on it,
All right.
which, yes, that's what would have been submitted.
All right.
Yeah, so that none of that, like I said, it's the name of the event is Lovello, but the foundation, the organization that the event raises money for, is going directly to a 501c3. It's not a pass through. It's going directly to the foundation that we work under.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion on the floor?
No. No.
Can I have one?
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to defer until we can get an updated application.
Have we already voted on that?
Yes, you've already
We did.
made that motion and it failed.
All right.
Is there no second for this one? Then this motion fails.
What is the motion?
The motion is to defer until there's a updated application. No second, the motion fails. Does anybody else have a motion to put on the floor?
I have a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we're voting on the motion to approve the application as presented by Lavello, requesting the amount of $10,000. Mr. Nelson,
Aye.
Ms. Bell,
Aye.
Mr. Truslow,
Nay.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Williamson.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Okay, and so, Mr. Chairman, the only thing remaining on the agenda is for us to set our next meeting date. We do not currently have any other additional applications that I have received. Generally, we will set a meeting once applications are received, but there was some discussion earlier this year about having more regular meetings. So if you all would like to look at your schedules real quick and come up with a couple of dates that would work, I think we should probably have a motion in a second on when we should meet next.
I will offer that we are budgeting right now, so within probably next month or two, there'll be a budget to review and opine on by the committee.
Debbie, would that be like the end of April or early May? Or like the end of,
Certainly.
of May or early June?
Oh, no, we want to do it before early June. There will be a draft of the budget available after the council budget workshop, which is next week. So certainly in a month, there'll be a draft for review.
Well, I would propose that we have a meeting, let's say sometime in mid-May. Any thoughts on, I could just pick a date. What, is there any day of the week that's better for the members than others?
Fridays are good from Fridays and 9 o'clock is good for me. I'd defer to David and Rusty and Julie's.
I think we've technically in the past worked off Debbie's schedule after one of the other meetings.
So, thank you for thinking of that. I can usually be pretty flexible, but Ways and Means is the third Tuesday of the month. So right before that is not a good time for me. So something either earlier than that or later than that would be
How
better.
about May 21st? That's a Friday.
May 21st.
Yes.
All right, that's fine with me.
All right, do we have a motion and a second for this?
I so move.
Second.
There's no discussion. Mr. Williamson? You want to vote in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Spell?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Truslow?
Aye.
All in favor, your next meeting is May 21st at 9 a.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second? Mr. Nelson,